It's the second part of my Python testing using mocks series, and this video will be about mocking exceptions. The code we have right now, the getJoke function, is too basic. Let's make it a bit real. First of all, we don't know how the server will respond, and so we have to just try to get the response. Probably to set a timeout will be a good idea. So let's say the timeout will be 30 seconds. If the request library will fail to get something from the server, an exception will be raised. Let's say that the server is too slow and we need a timeout exception. So the except clause timeout exception, and let's say that the returning value will be no jokes again. Also, there can be a connection error, for example, and other exceptions. The full list of all exceptions you can find in the source code of the request library. It's quite a long list. But to keep my example clear, I won't use them here. The timeout exception will be enough. We can add, for example, except requests exceptions, just for demonstration, connection error, but with the pass keyword. And if the server will respond, we have to handle the response in the else clause of the try-except block. So else, just separate for clarity. This version of the getJoke function is a bit more complicated, but it's still a quite basic example. Nevertheless, we got additional functionality that should be tested. How can we raise the timeout exception to test the except clause? And to do it, we have to use the side effect property of the getMock. So let's create a new test. I want just to copy and paste the previous test. Let's rename it to test getJoke raises exception. Something like this. Or timeout exception. Timeout exception. Then let's get rid of the definition of the mock response and the returning value of the getMock. And now I have to use the side effect property. Its value should be an instance of the exception or an iterable object. I wanted to use the timeout exception, so the timeout class and some message. And the assertion is the same, no jokes, because the returning value in the except clause, in this except clause, is no jokes too. So let's import the timeout class from the requests exceptions module. And it seems that's all. What do you think, whether the test will pass or not? Actually, it won't pass. Let's run the tests. Python tests. And we can see that this TypeError exception was raised. Catching classes that do not inherit from BaseException is not allowed. And here there is an important detail. Of course, we have imported the timeout exception, timeout class from the requests exceptions module. But after that, we mocked the request module here and here and here. And instead of the timeout class, we got a magic mock object. Let's check it. I want to add prints into the getJoke function. Somewhere here. And I want to print a type of the requests exceptions timeout. And then let's run the tests py again. And we can see that instead of the timeout class, we got the magic mock class. And thus, when the exception was raised, instead of the timeout class, was used a magic mock class, magic mock object that is not a subclass of the BaseException class. And that is why we got this exception. And how can we fix it? And actually it's quite easy. And one of the ways to fix it is to assign to the mock exceptions attribute a real request exception module. Mock requests it's one of the ways to do it, to fix it. And we have to import exceptions module. And let's run the tests again. And this time we can see that 4 tests have passed. Let's get rid of the prints. Okay, I think it's clear, and the next step is to use the raisEForStatus method of the response object. What's the point? Right now, in the current version of the getJoke function, we manually check the status code of the response object. Here. If it's okay, we return a joke. If it's not okay, we return no jokes. But instead of this approach, almost always using the raisEForStatus function is better. The main reason is that there is a bit more to it than testing just status code that equals to 200. And you should be making best use of tried and tested code rather than creating your own implementation. For instance, did you know that there are actually 5 different success codes defined by the HTTP standard, and 4 of those success codes will be misinterpreted as failure by testing for status code that equals to 200. And that is why to use the raisEForStatus is better. Let's add it to the try clause. Response raisEForStatus. The raisEForStatus function will raise an HTTP error exception if the status code is not successful, that is 400 and 500 status codes. We can see its logic in the source code. It's very simple. raisEForStatus 1, 2, and the raising of HTTP error exception, and that's all. It means that if the status code of the response object will be unsuccessful, the HTTP error will be raised, and we have to handle this exception accordingly. Accept requests exceptions HTTP error. And for the sake of the demonstration, the returning value will be this string. Return HTTP error was raised. And now the test. The test should be a combination of previous two. Let's copy the previous one and rename it. Test get joke, raise for status, for example. Then I need to define a mock response variable again, because the behavior of the function under the test, the getJoke function, depends on the status code. So let's add somewhere here the mock response variable again. It'll be a magic mock object, and the status code, let's say, will be again 403. Then goes the raise for status function. That will raise the HTTP error exception as its side effect. So side effect, and it'll be HTTP error. And the get attribute of the mock request will return the mock response. Let's get rid of the side effect here, return value this time, and its value will be mock response. The assertion will be HTTP error was raised. Or you can use, if you want, assert raises method, and it will take HTTP error and the get joke function as an option. Here I'm checking the returning value of this clause, so I use the assert equal. So let's run the code. And by the way, at this point it's probably more convenient to use the nose as the test runner. So pip install nose, already installed, and to run tests with the nose I can use the nose tests verbosity that equals to 2. Name HTTP error is not defined. I forgot to import it. Okay. Assertion error, HTTP error was raised, is not equal to was raised. I forgot to save my main py file when I fixed my typo again. Okay, and we can see that the test raise for status passed. Then, depending on our purposes, it can be important for us to separate logic for a certain status code. For example, if the server returns 403 and access forbidden, we do one thing, but if there is 504 internal server error, we do other things. And there are two options to handle it. The first one is to use the first version of the getJoke function when we compared status codes manually, or we can check the status code inside the except clause here. Something like this. HTTP error I want to save into E variable, and then the status code variable gets a new value, E exception response, and it has the response object has the status code. And then I want to check if status code in, for example, 5 503, 504, and I'm doing something. Otherwise, I'm doing something too. But as you understand, it's very hard to test. And actually, I don't sure that this idea is better than checking the status code manually. The next time we will look at other libraries for mocking requests library. So if you like this video about testing and mocking exceptions of the request library in Python, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.